Hi, and welcome to Second Rate Film School. I'm Andrew.
I'm Jake.
And here today we are doing something for the first time ever. We're doing a little bit of a pre-review for a brand new movie, Scream 2022, the fifth Scream movie. I'll get into the theory I have about the title in a little bit, but yeah, the Scream franchise is my personal favorite slasher film franchise. I'm assuming it's yours as well.
It is.
So yeah, we're actually recording this the night before we go see Scream 5. So we're just kind of going to do a little bit of a rundown of our love for this franchise, the problems and things we liked about the sequels, and then a kind of few predictions we have with this new one and what we hope they include. So yeah, we'll start with the first one. We did a commentary track for it back in October. The link is below. Mm-hmm. That kind of sums up, obviously, our broader thoughts because we had 2 hours to talk about it, but really hyper-focused. It's one of the best slashers of all time. It really revitalized the horror market. I mean, I know we were a little too young to remember it, but it's like, yeah, horror was in a pretty bad place when that came out. You look at, like, Halloween 6 came out, I think it was the same year, right?
Don't ask me the year that one came out.
We like to pretend it doesn't exist, but either way, around the same time, so, that was not a great place, The Freddy and Jason movies had really devolved into just insanity. I know they had New Nightmare and all that, which was great, but really the horror franchise was starting to die on the mainstream. So Scream came in and was just kind of like a shot of adrenaline. Mm-hmm. It's great. One of the first horror movies I ever saw, though I did see Scream 2 first, which that kind of spoiled the first movie for me, unfortunately. But watch it every Halloween. Love it. And I always tell people, it's not just a horror movie, it's a great mystery movie, too. And I think that's really overlooked as years have gone on, and we all know that it's Billy or Stu. But, like, I've shown it to a few friends who had never seen it, and they legitimately had no idea who the fuck the killer was.
It's a well-constructed murder mystery. It's a great whodunit. I mean, you could take away all the slasher horror stuff, and it could play as, like, a great murder mystery as is. I mean, that's just how well it holds up and everything. And it's still, especially the first one, how much it holds up, because it's... the horror films in general are still pretty timeless, and that's what keeps the Scream franchise so fresh, because horror is always changing, the state of movies are always changing, so that's why you can keep making these. They can never really get old. You'd have to really try hard, to get it wrong. Yeah. So that's what makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like these movies could really be used as like a introduction to horror, kind of like, go through the history of it, where the first one is like more looking at it through like, okay, even though it's injecting new life, but like the 70s and 80s slashers of the guy in a mask. Sequel, you get the higher body count, does the whole lampooning and pooning of the sequels. Third one, you get into the trilogy and concluding that. Fourth one, great on remakes, but kind of legacy, almost they were ahead of the curve on that one. There's a lot of great stuff with it, but overall, fantastic fucking movie. 5 out of 5 stars. I'd probably put it in my top 15 movies. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 10, but it's definitely up there as one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was a big movie for me when I first saw it as a teenager. Yeah, and about the sequels. Yeah, well, we can not talk spoilers, I guess, just to keep it kind of light and flowing and everything. We want to keep this short, but we can just give our general feelings on them.
All right, we'll start with part 2. First horror movie I think I ever saw. It was definitely the first Scream movie I ever saw, even edited for TV. I think on AMC of all channels. Loved it. It was great. Did not see the twists coming. I think the characters are all great in it. That was a really tough act to follow. Replacing Skeet Ulrich, replacing Matthew Lillard, replacing Rose McGowan and all that. To get all those new teen / early 20s characters. They did a great job casting, and again, Williamson's writing comes through on it again, and they're all very likable, and you're really sad to see some of them die. It's really painful to watch, and you're like, I probably feel worse about some of the deaths in that one than any of the other ones.
Yeah, me too, most definitely. Particularly one, but But yeah, Scream 2, I go back and forth between the first and the second one is my favorite. I maybe objectively speaking, the first is probably the superior one, just in terms of just the consistency of like the script and everything. I know it's Scream 2, they had to rewrite some stuff because the script got leaked out and Williamson didn't wasn't on the complete script process, but I think despite all that with the rewrites and everything, it's still a fantastic sequel. It's a fantastic movie. And it's more thematic about just violence in cinema and everything and how art reflects life and vice versa and everything. It's very interesting in that sense. And it also kind of lampoons sequels, but it's like a great, following up on the murder mystery thing. I love the whole Agatha Christie takes place in a singular location at this college campus. About 90% of it does, 95% of it. So it feels more claustrophobic, and it's kind of great because with the sequel, you know, Ghostface is back, and that becomes like the maddening question: why are they back, and what do they want with Sydney? Because Billy and Stu are dead, so what could they possibly want with Sydney? And that's kind of what everyone's asking, and what's driving Sydney crazy. And then yeah, it's a great twist. You don't really see it coming. It's very, very satisfying.
Yeah, I for me personally, I do like Scream 1 more, but Scream 2 is definitely close. I put it like Scream 1 is like a 5 out of 5. I put Scream 2 at like a 4.5 maybe 4.3. But yeah, Scream 2 overall to date best sequel.
Great film in general. I think I've watched that one the most actually.
Yeah, I think it was on TV more often too. So.
Yeah, I remember when it came on AMC too. I remember seeing the commercials, and then Scream 3, which I guess we can get into. That was
saw
the
it
first.
On TBS.
Me too.
Yeah.
Oh, me too. Yeah, that was the first time I ever saw it. Yeah, and my introduction to the franchise.
Yeah, I don't know if I saw Scream 3 before I saw Scream 1. I definitely saw the 2 and 3. I didn't see 3 first, luckily, because I don't know if I would want to watch them. But it's the weakest of them.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of fun in it. I think why don't you sum it up the way you summed it up to me last night when we watched it?
Yeah, I guess in the past I was a little too harsh on it. I always thought it was a bad movie, but watching it last night. It's a bad Scream movie, but it's an okay slasher film.
Yeah, no, I feel very similar to you. I think my main problem with it is there was a lot of behind the scenes stuff that was going on that kind of worked against it. So first off, Kevin Williamson was not back. He was had scheduling conflict, so he didn't have anything to do with it, the writing. So you lose a little bit of that through line of his writing. So you get someone who's trying to emulate him. And you once said it was like it felt like a high schooler had to like write Scream, and they watched the first two. Yeah. No disrespect to the writers; those are some big shoes to fill. And then I think the biggest thing is Sydney's not really technically the main character in it. Nev Campbell had scheduling conflict. She was only able to film for 20 days out of the 12 weeks. So I know everything is revolving around her, but it really feels almost like Dewey and Gale's movie more so. They were always solidly second tier to her, where she was the main in the first, second, and fourth, and presumably fifth. And they were always just like one step below. But now they're like, okay, we're in the forefront. They really are trying to solve the mystery in this one without her. And I'll say it's a very interesting portrayal of Sydney, and I think a great place to go. She's realistically got PTSD, and we saw shades of that with the 2018 Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis. I think this is a little bit more realistic. She's just like, I gotta fucking stay away from everyone. Ghostface has gotten in her head both times previously that she's like, I need to stay far away from everyone as possible because people keep dying when they're close to me.
Yeah. No, there's good stuff in the movie, a lot of good ideas. It's just more the execution. I don't... Nev Campbell being in it less, did that have to do with just her not wanting to be in it as much? Did they have to write around that?
I think if I read correctly, it was she had scheduling issues. She had like other stuff, and I guess like, it's like Jamie Lee Curtis wanted to take a bow from like the Halloween movies for a while. Maybe she was like, I don't want to fucking do 15 of these. You look at the amount of shit she had to do physically in parts 1 and 2 compared to part 3. There's not as many chase scenes for her, so maybe she's like, what, fuck it, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
Right around it a little bit. She's like the Bill Murray of this franchise with Ghostbusters, where he's like, less shit for me.
Maybe by the third one, yeah. Yeah, I don't blame her maybe at that point, but I do I like the central idea of her character where she's in hiding and she has to come out of hiding. That's fine, and I like the new setting in Hollywood. That's what's great about the franchise in general. That there's like a real continuity to it, and at the time you didn't really see that often with horror franchises. The characters in each film they're growing each time. You know, except with the third film, I would say Dewey and Gale that their arc is pretty. That's not so much an arc. Where they are in the beginning of it is pretty much exactly the same as they were in the beginning of the second one.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but that got really obnoxious. They should have just stayed together.
Yeah, no, that's the thing we'll get with part four, that they work together as a married couple very well, obviously, which is ironic as, when they made the fourth one, they were starting to go through their divorce, but they still seemed like they loved each other. Yeah, no, I think also an interesting thing is that I kind of admire the third one for is that's when you start really reaching the fact that when you think about it, most horror franchises, like the really big ones, we don't follow the same characters all the way through. So you look at it like Friday the 13th, pretty much new fucking characters every movie. Like the new skin bags for Jason to kill. Like, yeah, you got Tommy Jarvis and a couple of them and like a few through lines, but like this is consistently, Sidney Prescott, Dewey, and Gale. And all that, and same thing. Friday the 13th, and then you get Nancy and a couple of them, but like it's actually nice to see the consistent growth.
Yeah.
I mean, Gale and Dewey do reset a little bit, but it is interesting to see where they are. Nearly 6 years later at that point, and two instances in, like how this has changed them. Dewey's still reasonably happy-go-lucky, but like is kind of a little more jaded now. Like he's still goofy, but like not really as goofy as he was in the first one. I can't imagine him getting an ice cream cone in part 3 like he did in part 1.
Yeah, it's a little hard to pin them all down because it feels like another writer just trying to imitate their voices and not really getting it. That's kind of my problem with Scream 3 in a nutshell. Not
like with the voice changer.
Yeah, I was fine with that, but if they went with Kevin Williamson's original outline, this would go down as like the best horror franchise. That would have been brilliant.
Yeah, and no, I mean, without spoiling it for the two people who would actually want to watch Scream 3 who haven't seen it, I mean, I think the reveal is a little toothless. I think, without getting into it, when you build upon every other Scream movie being incredibly tied to Sydney.
Yeah.
I know the killer is tied to her, but like not in the same way as parts 1, 2, or 4 are.
Yeah. Sydney has to know who the killer is before. That's what makes Scream so scary. The fact that
it's the people closest to you.
Yeah, someone who isn't who they say they are. One of these people are lying, and she has no idea who it is, and
she really had no idea who it was.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what makes the franchise so unique in a way, and that's part of the power of it. It's someone that's lying to you, and it's actually like a secret psychopath. It's horrifying, but yeah, Scream 3, not as much. Doesn't quite stick the landing with that. Yeah.
All right, well, then moving on to Scream 4. So this was actually, when we rewatched it, we just finished Scream 4 like 10 minutes ago. That's the second time I've ever seen it. So it was very interesting watching. I watched it in college. I was a little Johnny-come-lately to it, but yeah, I really like it. It definitely makes up for the flaws of Part 3. It's definitely a great look at remakes, and I think it was a little ahead of the curve on legacy sequels.
Yeah, it's kind of an inadvertent legacy sequel without being. I mean, it's more doing remakes.
Yeah, which that was the state of horror at the time.
Yeah.
That torture porn with the saws, which they make reference to, and the kills are gorier. For the first time, I really shudder at the whole gore in these movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to even attach the legacy label on it because it's just another sequel, but it's just tackling remakes. But the film is kind of ahead of its time in terms of what it was doing and everything. So it makes me curious what they're gonna do with this new one.
Yeah.
But I do like the fourth one a lot. I saw it in theaters. I was very, very excited about it because at that point I was a huge fan of the franchise, and yeah, I was very pleased it made up for Scream 3, and I've seen it many times since then. And yeah, it's Ken Williamson back writing the script, and you can tell this time it's a better written mystery.
Teens feel very real this time.
Yeah, yep. And it's, I mean, I have some problems with it. I think it's not perfect. Um, I love the idea of the new generation, everything, but I think the thing is, I noticed the past couple times there isn't really like a Sydney isn't as doesn't quite feel as like the focus of this one. Do you know what I mean?
It's better than part 3, but I agree with you.
It's I don't know what her arc is exactly, or what she's doing in it, or who, you know,
Yeah.
they try to posit Emma Roberts Jill as like the new Sydney, but she doesn't quite feel as the main character too. She's got her whole stuff going on, but then it's hard to tell.
I know. Yeah, you're right. Jill is supposed to be the Sydney. They say as much, but yeah, and I almost remember the other people around her just as much, if not more, and that's not exactly great. Like, I know I remember Billy, Stu, and Randy and all them just as much as Sydney, but in their own unique ways versus they're all just kind of the new disposable teens.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all still distinct, really, all the characters.
They are, but like as we get into it, the my one problem with this franchise is, you know, they are very precious with the trio of characters.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's like, oh, it's the new generation, but you know.
I think Gail someone should have died in this movie. One of the three of them should have. I think Gail should have. It seemed like they were setting that up.
Yeah.
And I didn't like how they kind of, it was kind of a cop out there. I thought that would have given it a lot more weight, because it's just there's no way all these people can survive a fourth time. Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah. So yeah, real quick, just since we're going to be spoiling Scream 4, because I have to say this one point, skip to the 19-minute and 13-second mark to avoid those spoilers. Yeah, no, I think the problem is, it's like, yeah, everyone fucking dies in those ones.
That's what's great.
No, I like it, but like, yeah, it's like everyone dies, which is realistic, because it's like, yeah, they're fucking serial killers and these are teenagers, but it's like, yeah, you can't just like keep having Dewey, Gale, and Sid keep surviving over and over again.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know you said like the original ending was, you know, spoilers, so Jill is the killer. She gets taken out of the house, and the original ending was she's, you know, doing this so she gets famous and all that, and you hear them saying, we got a live one, meaning Sydney's alive. That would have been a great ending. Could have led into part 5. But no, we got to know for sure Sydney and all of them are alive, and don't worry, she's going to kill the bad guy. So literally every teen is dead except for Kirby, possibly, because apparently Hayden Panettiere had in her contract that she couldn't die on camera, I guess.
That's true?
That's what I've understood. And I did notice in the movie when fucking Macaulay Culkin stabs her, he has the line, I know it's not as quick as it seems in the movie, and the last you see, she is writhing around on the ground. So I guess that was their cop out. Like, I guess like they were potentially trying to leave the door open for her to be the main in part 5, which definitely will not happen. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that necessarily. Like, I would have liked her. I think she's a great character coming back. I think, like we said, like part 5 would have been great, where Jill has survived, and like someone is fucking with her, trying to like unveil that she's actually the killer and all that. Yeah. She's like super famous now. That would have been interesting.
That would have been great.
And if you want to, Sid does survive. Like, she can't remember any of it.
Yeah, or she's in a coma or something, and for the whole 5th movie, then she maybe wakes up at the end, and that leads into like the 6th movie, something like that you could do, and then, you know, Sydney's coming for Jill, and everything's gonna come crashing down. That could have been a great inverse of the previous trilogy, where you're following the killer as the new protagonist.
Yeah, no, it would have been interesting. So, all right, well, now we're back. So yeah, overall, we love the franchise, and are looking forward for this 5th one. I'm assuming it's safe to say.
Yeah, no, I definitely am. It's a new Scream movie. I'm always excited to see that for, you know, my aforementioned reasons. But yeah, so what do you think about it going in?
I'm a little worried because, like we said with the 4th one, in my opinion, the 4th one obviously was handling sequels, but also kind of, remakes, but also inadvertently did legacy sequels.
Yeah.
You know, Sydney's great line of, you know, remember, remakes don't fuck with the original is, like, kind of just sums up even the current state of horror. I know horror's changed in the past 11 years. Fuck, 11 years since Scream 4 came out.
Yeah.
It's changed, but, like, you really look at it that was coming out at a time when they were rebooting everything. They had that's a great scene where Kirby lists off all the horror remakes, and we were like having a horrible glut of them in the mid 2000s. Like there were a shit ton of them. Like we kind of forget about that.
The 2000s were a really bad year for horror movies in general.
Yeah.
You had some exceptions, but they really came back in the teens.
Yeah, so I'm worried. I'm wondering what will they be able to say about legacy sequels as much with this. Now, one thing I really want them to do, and this could be, I know Williamson isn't writing, but if they know Williamson's writing, I think this would be a great joke. So, as I said with my opening, this is just called Scream, which that's a thing you've seen with horror movies, with these legacy sequels, Halloween specifically, where it's like, oh, we're just going to do another sequel, but we're going to call it the same name as the first. Final Destination did that with The Final Destination. And it's a thing where it's like, you're almost like, are they embarrassed by how many fucking sequels they've done? Like, they don't want to fucking do that. So, like, but it's the legacy sequel, but, it's still a sequel to the original one. Though this one, keeping continuity of all 4 previous ones, which you don't see as much in horror now. But I think it would be actually a great thing where they have, in the opening credits of it, in the Stinger kill, they talk about where horror is, and like they make the joke about legacy movies. Like, oh, don't you just hate how like they call it like the same movie twice and all that? Like, how do I organize that in my DVD collection? How do I look that up now and all that? Like how do I look up Halloween and Halloween? Which one do I pick and all that? And it would be great then the killer kills them, and then it pops up on the screen as Scream 5 or Scream 5, and then that's what the Blu-ray would be. That would be a fun thing. It's like making fun of like the marketing of its own movie, and then forever now it'll be Scream 5.
That would be great. That's never gonna happen though. I
want it to happen.
Well, first of all, we don't know if this is gonna take down legacy sequels. We don't know that for sure. We don't even know what the hell the movie's about.
I think it's going to, because in the trailers, Ghostface says something along the lines of like, Sydney, it's an honor to meet you, and I think that's where we're starting to see like the reverence for these movies, with not even just horror movies, like Ghostbusters Afterlife, where it's like it's so reverent to it, and I wonder if I would love to see the killer is like a stand-in for fanboys. Like, it'd be great if like this is somebody who's like horribly obsessed with not the stab movies like we saw in Part 4. Just with the true crime, and that could be a thing about like our true crime obsession, like how many podcasts are out there about like true crime and all that. So this person doesn't give a shit about the movies, and that could actually be an interesting thing. Like, in my world, the opening kill is actually Gale. I want Courtney Cox killed in the opening few minutes, and it's revealed by the killer later on that he doesn't like the 15 stab movies or like whatever they'd be up to. And that, I think that's a great joke in the 4th one, that they're up to 7, and they make a reference like, oh, they had to stop making them about the real life stuff, so like Part 5 has time travel, like, and they do jokes where it's like it's watered down and become a dumb slasher that he, as a true crime aficionado,
or she
is obsessed with true crime and gets pissed off at Gale for like ruining the sanctity of the original. Like that would be just great in my opinion.
It would be interesting to see the killer as like a really entitled fan, because these days we're going to like the legacy sequel thing. Maybe we're getting our hopes about this. They may not do this at all, but there is something to really say about movies and like the fandom today and I kind of hope it's like the Matrix Resurrections of Scream, in a way where you're kind of dissecting that over reverence for these franchises and everything, and poking fun at the audience to the point where they're the killer, where they're so precious about that franchise. Maybe some point the stab movies didn't go the way they wanted to, and they got so pissy about it. They said, oh, it fucking ruined my nostalgia for the original 3, and it made them want to like go make their own new Scream movie that's more faithful and more fan friendly to the original. And so it's very slavish to that. So I mean, I don't know, I'm probably getting my hopes up. I don't think it's going to be that, but I am curious what it's going to be, and I hope it's good for what it is. That's the most, and I hope it stays true to the spirit of Scream. From what I see, it looks like a good movie, even though I have no idea what the fuck it's about. I think they're being a little too secretive. Like, I don't even know the premise of the movie.
Yeah, my concern with this is, and we were talking about this, and I'm like, it won't be Scream 3 bad, but part of me wonders, could this end up being like Blair Witch 2016, where it's got a ton of talented people behind it, but like there's so much, like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, or they're focusing on it a little too much. That's like trying to recapture lightning in a bottle. That it ended up with Blair Witch 2016 was a much better movie than Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, aka Scream 3 in this scenario. But I can tell you, I remember a hell of a lot more about Book of Shadows than I do about Blair Witch, where it's a competent movie. It's a very well made, very well shot, very well acted movie, and in a technical stance, better than Book of Shadows. But I'm worried, is it like this, where it's like, it's a competently made movie. Technically, it's better than Scream 3, but like less memorable, and that's my concern.
Yeah. I like the filmmakers, though. I liked Ready or Not. That was really good. It has
like the filmmakers of Blair Witch 2016.
Well, that is true. That is true. And
Adam Wingard, guys, he did that. Right?
Yeah, the writers are good too, but I don't know. Tonally it looks actually a lot scary. Like might be the scariest Scream movie. It looks a lot darker, which I guess is fine, but it's kind of missing that humor. What's great about Scream, it has that great balance of the humor and horror at the same time. And this looks like it's more like a straight up horror film, which I guess could work, or there's just more to the movie we haven't seen yet.
I think it's that. I mean, we probably should have watched the trailers for all 4 of the previous movies, like just the first trailer to see, like, because I don't think they were probably showing too much humor in it. Like, I think they probably initially built up. I'm trying to remember. We've only remembered the 4th one, like actually seeing commercials for it, and I don't really recall too much humor even in that one. There was.
I remember. They had kind of the wit. They retain like the Williamson Woody dialogue and everything, and that kind of that.
Well, and then I guess that's goes into my biggest concern with it. We don't have Williamson or Craven in this one.
Yeah.
For all the problems of Part 3, you at least had Wes Craven's creative vision as the director, the man behind the camera.
Yeah.
And not knocking any of the writers or directors of this, it just is concerning when it's like, oh, this is the first time when the training wheels, or not even the training wheels, when the fucking wheels we've all known for 20 plus years are off, and we have to build the new wheels up, and it's, hopefully they're going to be great. I'm just a little concerned. There is a little humor in the trailer with the whole, oh, do you have a gun? Of course I do. I'm Sidney Prescott, which I jokingly say, she never has a gun, actually. Like, she takes other people's guns, but she herself never has a gun in any of these, even when she's a survivalist in Part 3. And then Jack Quaid doing the whole "I'll be right back, I'm gonna die" thing, which of course he's now not gonna die. I'm calling it. He's gonna be the killer now. That's like
I think I know who the killer is.
Do you want to say who the prediction is for you?
I don't know any of their names. That's the problem. The one, who I think it is, there's one girl, she has black hair. She looks a little sketchy. She's got black hair. That's who I think the killer is. I don't even know her fucking name. I just saw the trailer, like, okay, I think it's her. Or it's the black woman.
Who's got the last name Meeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's her, the girl with the black hair.
Note from the future, Jake is referring to Mickey Madsen, who's playing Amber, and Jasmine Savoy Brown is Mindy. So those are his 2 suspects. Well, join us in a couple seconds when it's now like 48 hours later, whenever we decide to re-record it. But yeah.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
We'll see. It'll be interesting either way, or we'll just forget about it and it'll be like, that was all right.
At worst, like I said, the worst case scenario I see for this is it's forgettable and bland.
Yeah.
All right, and we're back. So yeah, we just watched Scream 5, or Scream. I guess my prediction of them retitling it Scream 5 or 5 Scream, with the stylized 5 being the stylized S was wrong. So Jake, you were right on that one. I did have too much hope.
Yeah, but at the same time, we found out that was kind of the point of the movie, and we also ended up being kind of right about certain things.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah. So we're just going to start off first with our spoiler-free views on it. Generally speaking, I liked it. There were a lot of great parts. I particularly really liked Jack Quaid's Richie and Jasmine Savoy Brown as Randy's niece Mindy being the 2 standouts for me in the movie. The kills are the most gruesome and visceral of the series, really. So this is the first Scream movie where I've actually been squeamish and almost tempted to look away during some of them, so that's a plus. And I think the opening scene may be the strongest in Scream 1.
Well, I disagree with that. Scream 2.
I mean, that's a great opening, but still.
It has nothing on Scream 2. Scream 2 is a brilliant opening.
I mean, it's a great opening. I just think this is the first time I've felt very fearful because, at least in Scream 2, there's a lot of people around. They could have asked for help but chose not to.
But that was kind of the point of Scream 2.
I know. But, yeah, so we'll get into that in more detail in a minute. But that being said, I think this is only moderately better than Scream 3. Scream 4 is still the stronger of the late series sequels. Yeah, and nowhere near close to being Scream 1 or 2 level good. So that was kind of disappointing. One of my main concerns is it didn't have much in the way of film critique, to the level that the other ones did, which kind of makes the backbone of what makes a Scream movie. Here it almost felt like a afterthought or lip service at best. I think one of the problems they had with this was that Scream 4 inadvertently handled a lot of the same material they wanted to do here with legacy sequels, so that kind of put them in a corner, but it is what it is. Overall, I did enjoy it, though.
Yeah, I, for the most part, agree with what you say. I liked it. I thought it was okay. About a 6 or 7 out of 10 for me. I would probably, surprisingly, I would put it on the same level as like Scream 3. One strength is another's weaknesses. But I liked it. I liked a lot of the characters, like Richie and everything. But I think what I get on fundamentally is I just don't think it's a particularly well-written murder mystery. I think the difference between the Williamson written scripts and this one is that Williamson is a pretty well-learned guy who knows storytelling fundamentals and can tell like a really good story, but he also knows how to write murder mysteries too, and is probably like a pretty well-read and learned guy about that. Because Scream at the end of the day is like a classic murder mystery, like what I think we were talking about in the other discussion about that. And here it's the case where it feels like these guys knew less about how to write a murder mystery, even a Scream movie, and just kind of fell into the same traps as like these other legacy sequels, but for very different reasons. I will say it does introduce some new and interesting ideas, which I applaud them for. I appreciate that. They didn't quite stick the landing. Funnily enough, for the same reasons as like Jason Reitman or like J.J. Abrams, where they don't properly deconstruct these favorite movies of theirs. So it almost feels like a hodgepodge of Scream stuff in there.
It's Scream light. It's like what we said in the last part, where Scream 3 is a good slasher, good movie, goodish movie, but not a good Scream movie. So that's where I am kind of like on that with this, is viewing it like that. And it's tough. This is obviously the first one that neither Kevin Williamson nor Wes Craven, obviously since the latter had passed away, were involved in. I mean, so when you look at, the other weaker entry of the series is the one Kevin Williamson didn't write, and then the fact that you don't have Wes Craven's sensibilities and style of his direction also doesn't help here either. So, I mean, it was just a tough act to follow with Scream 4, and again, when we get into the spoiler section, I'll detail why I think Scream 4 is the worst enemy of this one versus any of the other sequels or even Part 1. And yeah, it was just a tough act to follow, and they did the best they could. No, they could have done better. But no, there's a lot to like in it. I'll definitely, have pleasant memories of rewatching this one, watching this, but if I never had to rewatch it again, like if you told me you can never watch Scream 5 ever again, I'd be like, all right, but I'd probably be that way for most of the like sequels outside of Part 2, to be perfectly honest. I mean, I just love the first two more than any of the other ones, so I guess that's my view on 3 and 4 as well.
I think just fundamentally what's wrong with this movie is the killer's motivation is very surface level. Therefore, it's kind of a surface level appraisal of Scream in general. I think that's kind of where it all begins and ends.
All right, that's pretty much it for our spoiler-free thoughts. So, yeah, unless you've already seen the movie or don't care if it gets spoiled, I guess it's the end of the line for it. So we hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to join us for the spoiler talk, this was your warning. All right, well, where do we want to start with the spoiler, I guess, with it? I guess the mystery angle and the killers. Yeah, me and Jake were both right. We both picked out the movie's respective killers. The actress that he was referring to is Mickey Manson, who plays Amber Freeman, and the other killer is Jack Quaid as Richie. We both guessed him right at the get-go.
Yeah. I won't say we were geniuses about this because it did seem kind of odd. At least, granted, I was half right. I did not think Jack Quaid was the killer. But it was kind of, it wasn't the best concealed mystery in the movie, but I was kind of surprised about Richie because I thought it was so obvious that they wouldn't. I mean, I didn't think they would do it because I thought it would be so exactly, and plus he was so likable in the movie. I didn't want him to be the killer, so when he was, I was a little surprised and taken aback, but in a good way. But I think fundamentally and I didn't mind them or anything. I liked the performances, especially Amber. I liked her the performance.
There's no bad performances in this movie. I think
no.
Any problem we are going to have with characters is coming strictly from the writing and potential directing in some moments. The actors, they do the best with what they were given. Right.
I
think for me, like with it wasn't a great mystery because you had referred to her as the one with the black hair.
Yeah.
So I didn't. Several of them have darker hair as well. I didn't know who you were referring to. So like, Tara has dark hair. Liv has dark hair. Mindy has dark hair. Amber has dark hair. So I'm like, okay, which one? And then as soon as Amber starts talking, I'm like, oh, she's the killer. And it was the same thing. I was suspicious of Richie, but it almost kind of worked in a way because I'm like, they're so obviously the killers that it's like it got to the point where I'm like, it can't be them. Like it can't be them. And like when it gets to the end, when Amber is revealed to be the first killer and she kills the Liv character, I'm like, there's got to be a second Ghostface. Well, there's not enough people left. Who could it be? And I'm just like ignoring the fact that straight up Richie is still potentially a suspect. But I'm like, no, it's way too obvious. It can't be him again.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was intentional. Like, we're going to make it super obvious that it's them to the point that fans will be like, there's no way it could be them. But that's not a great mystery. I shouldn't see it coming.
Yeah, I think on a deeper, more fundamental level, it just, the reason all those things are pretty flawed is I just feel like I said in the non-spoiler section, the motive is very surface level. You compare it to the other movies, like, let's just say, like, Billy, right? The motive was abandonment and revenge. Like, that was why you decided to put on a ghost mask and go on this Machiavellian killing spree, right? Here, they're just toxic they're crazy because they're toxic fans, and, like, there's something very interesting about saying, like, I know we were talking about we were hoping for that, but this did it in the wrong way where it needs to be on a more... There needs to be a better motive for that. That's kind of where it starts.
Yeah.
Because, like, with Billy, I mean, yeah, they were crazed movie fans who did it. Obviously, you're technically crazy whenever you decide to do something like this, but there needs to be a logic to it, even if it's a crazy logic. But here, it was... The message just seemed to be toxic fans are crazy because they're toxic fans, but that's not necessarily true.
To quote your line, but why?
Yeah, but why? That's what I kept going to when he's talking about his motivation. I just, but why? Why are you doing this? I never quite bought that.
Yeah. So, but basically, to fill it in, if for some reason you're watching us without having watched the movie, I know Jacob will probably listen to this and never watch Scream 5. So, Jacob, this is for you mainly. Basically, yeah, both killers are just pissed off with how the Stab franchise has gone, and it's clearly a reference to the toxic fans for shit like the new Star Wars movies, particularly what was it, Last Jedi. I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm confusing the titles for those ones. It was Last Jedi was the one that everyone hated, right?
Yeah, I guess.
The middle one. Whatever episode 8 was.
Even though it was fine.
Yeah, no, but, like, that was the one, and, they even, like, it was a very groan-worthy moment because Mindy is explaining toxic fandom, and she's like, remember, everyone hated Stab 8, that was the one directed by that guy who did Knives Out. I'm like, oh, haha, Ryan Johnson did episode 8, and then he went on Knives Out. So it's
anyway, that gets to my deeper point of, like, there's no real through line of what this movie's trying to say. It's almost, I don't know if it's inconsistent, it's just like a hodgepodge. On one hand, you have the two sisters reconciling from their past. You have Sam being the long-lost daughter of Billy. And then you have this whole thing about these crazed fans trying to make a more fan-friendly Stab film, and those two things don't quite coalesce in the movie. I don't know what it's really trying to do. That's why I think the sister being the killer would have made more sense, even though it still would have been kind of predictable. At least it would have been made more thematic sense.
She's killing for breaking up the family.
Yeah, but at the same time, how does that tie thematically to the legacy sequel, or the requel, as they call it in the movie? So that's what Williamson was good at, threading that needle, where, with the first movie, obviously it's commentating on
violence in general.
Well, no, on horror films in general. It's taking all the tropes, but Billy is like an actual character, or on the surface level, he is like the horny boyfriend trying to have sex with his girlfriend who's a virgin. But there's a reason for that, and he's suspected because of that reason. But it ties deeper into his abandonment and and his motive of revenge. Here, there's really none of that. In the movies, you either have revenge or fame as like the real motives, but here it's just, we want to remake the movie because we weren't happy with it, and that's fine, but that's not a real reason. It's like saying, and the excuse shouldn't be, oh, they're crazy. That doesn't make any sense. It's like saying the Joker in The Dark Knight is crazy because he's an anarchist, and yes, he is crazy and he's an anarchist, but why is he doing those things? It's because he has a point to prove, and it's to prove that people are as bad as him, and he's constantly pushing people and testing them in that sense, and that's where the drama of the film comes from. That's part of the construction of the film. That's what the story is. It doesn't happen in this movie. It's just, all that is kind of lip service. It's just brought up twice in the movie, and yeah.
No, and that's the thing. There are two times where they mentioned toxic fandom. So the one is in the kind of the rules scene, and it's pretty early on in the movie. I'd say probably within the first half of the movie.
Yeah.
They're at, and it's Jake and me had to seem like lunatics in our theater because the new generation is assembled by Sam, her boyfriend Richie, and Dewey to try and figure out who could be the killer and to kind of go over everything. And they go to the Meeks house, or Meeks Martin household. It's Randy's sister from Scream 3, the dorky friend from Princess Diaries. She showed up, and we were laughing our asses off because everyone knows Scream 3 is the least popular one of it. It's like if in Ghostbusters Afterlife they didn't really reference Ghostbusters 1, they just referenced Ghostbusters 2 constantly, and I think there are more references to Ghostbusters or to Scream 3 than any of the other ones, but that's besides the point. And they just kind of do a quick explanation of what toxic fans are, and then that's it. And then the killers at the end are opining on how bad the Stab franchise has gotten, and they're like, well, people just hate us because we're the fans, but we deserve respect. And it got to the point where I'm like, okay, you're really over the top here on this, but you kind of had to lay it out because you didn't do any of that groundwork throughout the rest of the movie.
It's not there built within there's no through line in the movie with that, unlike the other films.
Oh, and there's one other moment when Richie is watching YouTube, which apparently there's I did not notice it, but you can see a thumbnail where apparently it shows that Kirby did survive Scream 4, so good for Hayden Panettiere. But they have the Dead Meat guys cameoing as other YouTubers bitching about the in-universe Stab 8 movie, and that's as close as we get to any actual examples of toxic fandom. Mindy is not a toxic fan. She just says there are toxic fans out there. We see 15 seconds of two YouTubers bitching about this movie, and then that's it. So it's just very surface level with it.
Yeah. I'm fine with doing that whole toxic fan, because we do live in an age today where I do think we're seeing big budget fan films. They're no longer, those embarrassing Star Wars fan films of teenagers in the woods, with the rotoscope lightsabers. Now it's Ghostbusters Afterlife. It's Star Wars The Force Awakens. It's movies like that. It's just this over reverence for this thing, and these fans just don't really know how to deconstruct the things that they love. But more importantly, I feel like a lot of these movies are more reactionary because these movies are made to appease people and to not piss off a certain fan base. So a lot of creative decisions and movies are being greenlit based on this, and that sucks because it makes pretty milk toast movies. Yeah. Oh, so that's interesting. I think there's something legitimately to say with that, but there just isn't really anything deeper.
Yeah, and that's the other thing they were touching on is obviously legacy sequels, and this is what I was alluding to in the non-spoiler part was, and the previewing of it that I was concerned was Scream 4 was very ahead of the curve. Like, obviously, they were tackling just remakes at the time, but they almost kind of, with Jill and Charlie's plan, kind of got into the legacy sequel of, well, we have to try and, kill Sid. We're going to kill Sydney, so we're bringing in the legacy character. We're the new Randy and Sid and all that. So, like, they were kind of a little ahead of the game, so it did put this in a awkward position in the legacy sequel standpoint. I think you could still have said some interesting things about it, and they chose not to. But yeah, then they completely just dropped the ball on the toxic fandom thing. Like I just said, there just a couple small things you could have done to have tied it through the rest of the movie was, we see briefly Gail's morning show. A lot of these morning shows will have like a tweet deck or whatever you call it, and like you could have had like just toxic fans, just like very just subtle thing on it, or the kids bitching more about the movies. Have it there.
I think the film needs a page one rewrite. I think it needs to be totally reconstructed because you look at the other movies, 1, 2, and 4, and they're constructed around that, of the killer's motivation, and that ties into thematically what Williamson is also commentating on horror films and the state of films in general. This movie doesn't do that, and then once you do that, everything kind of resolves itself. And here, there's a problem. I don't quite know what the theme of the movie is. I don't know if it's about secrets of the past. Maybe, because that seemed to be like the heart of the movie with the sister and then the whole Billy daughter thing.
Yeah, by the way, when Jake said the ghost of Billy Loomis, he is not joking. I know it's a hallucination. They're not saying ghosts are here, but it felt very Scream 3 to me, ironically, where Sid can see like her mom's ghost, and it's like hallucinations because she has PTSD. I just felt out of place there because there were never hallucinations in Scream 1 or 2 or 4, and it feels out of place here. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I don't know like what the heart of this one is supposed to be.
I feel like it's supposed to be the whole sister thing.
I guess, but like, and both of those actresses are great, but like,
I thought Tara was better than Sam.
I mean, I think they're both good performances. I think it's just Sam wasn't given as much to work with, and
yeah.
Also, it's great. Her name. One thing I did dislike in this movie is this one did something that the rest didn't do, where the names are gimmicky. So they say at the beginning, "Oh, Sydney lived on Elm Street." We're on Elm Street, and then Judy's son is in the movie, and his name is Wes. And then her name, the family last name of Sam and her sister are Carpenter. But given the fact that Sam's father was actually Billy Loomis, her name would have been legally Sam Loomis. So Halloween/Psycho reference. I just thought that was interesting, and I wanted to point out that I knew that, so no one has to tell me I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Briefly going back though to the motives, that was the thing, that when you get down to it, in the vast majority of the movies, all but part 3 have 2 killers, and while all the killers have the same motive of, we're going to kill a bunch of people, Sidney Prescott's obviously the one in the middle we have to kill, they do have differing motives. So in part 1, Stu is just a fucking psychopath who likes this shit, where Billy is motivated by, I need to fucking ruin Sydney and her father's life because they ruined my life.
I remember now. Actually, you jogged my memory on that. I'm not asking for something particularly deep or profound in terms of motive. Like Stu, right? It was peer pressure. That was really, he's this impressionable, stupid kid, and it's okay. You buy that. That's fine. I don't need something very deep. I just need a good reason. Like it could have been entitlement. It could have been self-pity. It could have been.
any number of things. Well,
it could have been revenge too, honestly.
Yeah, my theory, what could have made this better was, so I'm fine with Richie representing the toxic fans.
Yeah.
I'm fine because he was not from the town. He had no physical connection to the murders.
Yeah.
To the murders, to the movies, anything. He was just a new guy. So Amber, though, grew up in the town and even lives in Stu Macher's house, which I thought was cool, getting to revisit that. I didn't feel, the same wave of, like, are we doing this when we saw Halloween Kills when they went back into the Myers house, because it felt a little bit earned here. Like there's something I don't know. It felt better for me here. I enjoyed that part, but Amber's a fan as well. See, and I jokingly was saying this because they just kept saying in the trailers is we're all connected to this somehow, or and we were discussing wait, are they physically going after people from the first one? And we find out they are. The main girl Sam is Billy's daughter. The first kill in the movie is Stu's nephew. Brandy's niece and nephew are in here. Obviously, you have the original characters are in there. See, I would have loved to have Amber's reveal be that she was Stephen Orth's little sister, adoptive sister, I should say. If you don't remember who Stephen Orth is, he's Drew Barrymore's boyfriend from the first one. The first kill in the entire franchise. And no one remembers that guy. Everyone remembers the opening, scene. It's just Drew Barrymore, obviously. But that would have been great. So my theory, or my proposed version, I should say, is you have Steve is killed. That puts a huge strain on Mr. and Mrs. Orth. They're dealing with, their marriage is falling apart. Their baby boy was killed. Fast forward to, 2005 or however old these kids are supposed to be. They just adopt a kid to just try and, save the marriage. How a lot of people, have a baby to try and save the marriage. That baby becomes Amber. That obviously doesn't fix their marriage because, of course, that always doesn't. And they become very neglectful parents. So Amber's just, pissed off that she got brought into this shitty situation because of these murders that her adopted brother, who she never met, was just tangentially involved in. But much like how most people don't remember Steve from the first movie, no one in the town remembers him. So that could be a thing where she's like, yeah, the Meeks family, Sydney's family, and da-da-da-da-da, they all went through trauma too, but they're famous. They have movie characters named after them. People know them. We're a footnote in the franchise of Stab, and that could have been a, good, kind of juxtaposition to Richie's self-entitlement that she's pissed off. She wants to be entitled to the fame of having a famous dead person as well, and that could have been a funny reveal. She's like, my name is Amber Orth, and everyone's looking at her. My brother was Steven. Everyone's still looking at her. Casey's boyfriend.
Yeah, exactly. It's and when we're dealing with legacy sequels, which deal so much with nostalgia and reverence and member berries, remember this, remember that. I would love the idea, because this is something that Kevin Williamson I feel would have done in the spirit of classic Scream, where the movie is obviously about legacy sequels and remembrance and remember all these classic things. Well, the twist kind of would be the reversal. It's the killer is the person no one remembers, and she's trying to get everyone to remember Stephen Orth or who she is and everything. It's classic Scream, telling you exactly what it is, but there's still a reversal to it and everything, and it becomes much deeper and more personal, which kind of goes back to to murder mysteries too, where the killers, there's always something more to them than that. So I feel she could have been the true kind of Richie's kind of that,
the heavy.
Yeah, the heavy. Yeah, So he could have been the stew of it, but Amber would have been the true brains of it, and it would have been kind of sad and pathetic at the same time in a way. I think that could have. It didn't need to be that, but I think that could have fit into what this movie was trying to do.
Just give one of them a different motivation, and I think it would be much easier to do a personal thing that would tie into the legacy with the person who grew up in Woodsboro.
That would have been cool.
And I will give this movie credit that it didn't fall into the trap of a lot of legacy sequels. I was just imagining, could this be Halloween Kills, where we're gonna bring to put in perspective. At the beginning, they're saying Sam, she goes in about her father. She's like, I have to tell you about who my father is. And, I can't remember what the line is, but, it's in the phone call where they say, talk about her father and, what you don't really know and all that. And I did not go to Billy Loomis as being the father. I'm like, oh god, what fucking character in the background from like Scream 1 are they gonna pull out? So like with Halloween Kills, where they have to bring Tommy Doyle and like Lonnie and the little what was the Kelly or what? No, dump it in later. And the nurse and all them. They brought and the sheriff, and they bring every fucking character from Halloween who's still alive and acting back. I'm like, oh my god, what teenager in the background are they gonna be like? That's the father, and I'm like, no, I will give them credit that they're like not trying to pull what few actors are left back. I didn't like Skeet Ulrich being dragged into this. I thought the ghost effect was a little de-aging was a little off for my taste, but yeah, it was. They didn't fall in the trap of legacy sequel. Hey, remember this constantly.
No, that's what I like about it too. It succeeds and it kind of fails in certain areas of like the legacy sequel. But we can get to like the actual legacy characters like Dewey and Gale and Sidney. But Dewey I thought was pretty well used in the movie.
Yeah.
This is the one thing it has over Scream 4 for me, where I liked how the protagonist was new. It wasn't Sidney, it was Sam. And then Sidney and Gale, and they're there just kind of support it, but it was done well. I feel like that should have been more the thing in Scream 4, because in Scream 4 at times it's a little hard to tell who's the protagonist. Is it Jill or Sidney? But anyway, it was at least the right approach here. And I did kind of like how, Sidney is just kind of done with it all, and she's shooting the doors and everything. She just doesn't give a fuck anymore.
Well, I love like when she hangs up on Ghostface, and you can hear whichever Ghostface. I was presuming it's Amber.
That was Richie.
Oh, Richie.
Yeah, she opened the door. She's like, wait, and then he was like on the phone like this. You can tell that was.
Oh,
him.
Okay, I didn't notice that, but yeah, Ghostface is like going on. She's like, I've seen this movie. He hangs up, and Roger Jackson had to have loved this one because he got to do a little bit more in the terms of like acting range, because the beginning scene is great where he's pretending to be just some guy calling for her mother and all that. He sounds reasonably normal to begin with, and then that where he's like, they're like, oh shit, this isn't how the movie's supposed to go. Like that worked very well with the fanboy idea that they don't have a contingency for someone hanging the phone up on them, because it's the horror movie. They have to hear the whole conversation out from my plan and my taunting, and they had no idea what to do. They're like, no, I have so much more to say, and that was great.
That's what I liked about it. That's where they could have fucked up even more, is like these stupid fans, because they didn't really think this stuff through. Again, it could have been a real nice lampooning of just how people read these things in a service level way, and that becomes their downfall. But they kind of fall into those same traps.
Yeah, now see, and that's the thing. So we'll get into my problems with later, but Dewey dies in this, and I'm glad we're stopping the over-reverence for the characters. Like, when it's a slasher movie, and like you have the same three people never dying. And I mean, they even have him say when the kids come and ask for help, he's like, I've been like stabbed like 9 times and shot. I'm not getting involved in this anymore. Like that, it's a very real thing where he's like, now she's like, how many more times can something bad happen to me before my number's up? And we find out 5th time.
Yeah.
I was actually hoping Sidney was going to die. I thought what it would have been a great moment. So Sidney and Gale go to the murder house. They go inside. Gale is shot, is shot at by Amber, and she gets shot in the stomach. And her and Sid still go in the house. I would prefer Gale is stuck outside or wherever. She can't physically go in or something. They go in. Amber and Richie are holding her, Sam, and Sidney hostage, and they're like going through their whole plan and whatnot. And much like when Scream 1, they realize that... what was the younger sister's name? Tamara?
Tatum?
No, in the new one.
Oh, the new one. Tara.
Much like in Scream 1, they realize Tara has gone missing, and that's when the plan starts unraveling, and like, oh shit, we gotta go look for her now. I would have loved, Sidney taunts him or whatever, Richie, and it's like, oh, I remember this part of the movie too, or whatever, and then Richie turns back, it's like, you're right, and then just shoots Sidney in the head. I think that would have been that would have been very Kingsman-like when Colin Firth gets just shot in the head, and it's, incredibly unexpected, and it's like, okay, the new main character is Sam and Tara now, they are the leads now. Sidney Prescott is gone, and I think that would have been a good way to send her off. She's still even when she's in danger, has her fuck you attitude, but finally she encountered the one killer who was smart enough to be like, no, I know what happens as soon as we turn our back on you. This is how this fails. That's how Billy and Stu died.
I think if it was well executed and earned, that could have worked.
and I think my way would have been great. My concern with trying to kill her off is I did not like how they killed Dewey off.
Yeah, it was a little contrived. It's something that he probably wouldn't have fallen for at that time. I get he has his heart on his sleeve. He's kind of a goofball. Out of all the three of them, he would kind of do that, but still, by that point, I think he would have smartened up and.
Yeah, no, I mean, so the context is they're in the hospital. He comes running in, gets tackled by Ghostface, throws Ghostface off, then helps Richie up, and they start leaving. It's like, no, turn around and shoot Ghostface dead. He unloads his clip into Ghostface. You think Ghostface is dead. He puts Richie, Tara, and Sam on the elevator, and he's like, I gotta do this. I gotta make sure they always come back. And you have a dramatic thing as he's like reloading his gun. He gets way too close to Ghostface. His phone rings, which was stupid. Gail was calling. And
that was the dumb thing. I'm okay with him slipping up, not shooting him, and they just in the heat of the moment they have to get out of there. That's fine. And him having to go back, that fucking phone ringing though, I thought that was so dumb. Come on, that's not something Dewey would have fallen for.
I don't think Dewey would have gotten close with it. It's like with Halloween Kills. It's like, why are other people with guns getting within stabbing range?
It should have been more of like a face-off or something.
Yeah, no, like it, and you get down to it, even though
Dewey should not have been fooled like that.
Yeah, even though Amber's obviously like a teenage girl, you're going up against like a 50-year-old man who is like, or 50-plus-year-old man who has a lot of injuries. It's like, yeah, it could just be like she got the fucking upper hand on him. Like, I would even been fine if rounding a corner or whatever, he gets stabbed, and then in the final confrontation, he's too weak to fight back or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, versus just a stupid mistake of being distracted by a phone and getting right up within stabbing range. It's like they did Dewey dirty.
Yeah, a little bit with that. Yep. So that was a little disappointing, but I'm glad they killed one of them off, and it still worked as a beat. It's sort of like the all is lost moment in the movie. That's what prompts Sydney to come back, and that's what would do it, of course. And
she had to leave Mark with the kids. So I guess she married Mark Kincaid from the third one, is the reference.
I missed that. I heard Mark. I just did not. I forgot his name was Mark, to be honest.
It took me a second. I'm like, Mark, who the hell is Mark? Because I just always refer to him as just fucking Patrick Dempsey. Like, in that, I forget his name. I'm like, it took a second, but we had watched all four of them in a row. So, and then, like, my brain fired. I'm like, oh, that was his name. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I just think that just the execution of, like, they just tweaked that scene a little bit. I would have been fine. I don't think all three of them needed to die. I think Gail's final kind of, like, redemption here at the end, where she's like, I'm not gonna write about this again. I'm like, fuck them, they can live in anonymity is the line.
Yeah.
And how she plans on writing about Dewey. I think that could have been a good beat where she then, like, says the same thing, like, about Sid. She's like, because she says about Dewey, it's like, I want to write about a good man who, you know, served his town and would do anything for anyone. And then, like, you know, with Sid, be like, I want to write about a woman who, you know, the world just kept shitting on, but she just wouldn't give up and just kept saying, fuck you, and standing back up. You know, like, that would have been, like, a nice, you know, showing her love for Dewey and respect for Sid and their friendship of 25 years and all that. And, yeah, I think that would have been a good ending to those two characters and, you know, the Legacy sequel closing. But, you know, supposedly they said they want to make more movies. Neve Campbell said she's interested, so gotta keep her alive, I guess.
And I think the other thing I just want to say is that I think criticizing toxic fandom, I've noticed in, like, this quote-unquote discourse, has become an excuse to not criticize these, like, beloved films.
Yeah.
Which has kind of become, like, the reverse toxicity of, I believe. It never really gets anywhere. And I've noticed this already with Scream 5, where people are like, oh, they're playing into the killer's hands. Like, they're acting, it's like, well, no, it's... Look, there's stupid criticisms, which I get, which happen all the time in movies, but there's also, like, legitimate criticisms that people have, and people now just shut down whenever you try to criticize something.
And I think it's, like, the toxic defenders are just as much of a problem. And I've seen this with Ghostbusters, Afterlife, and, like, any Legacy movie now, where it's just like, you know, to be perfectly honest, the people who defend Last Jedi to the fucking bitter end and say it's the best movie ever annoy me just as much as the people who say Last Jedi is the worst movie ever and should be, like, wiped from the canon. And it's like, you are both on two sides of the same coin, or you're like really investing heavily in a corporation's piece of entertainment, and you're being blind to anything either positive in one direction or negative in the other direction. And it's like, I've seen tons of headlines where it's like, oh, well, the new Cowboy Bebop show wasn't supposed to be good, or Wheel of Time is bad, but that's the point. It's like, no, yeah, there are companies like Asylum out there who purposely are trying to make schlock movies that are costing them like $3 million, really cheaply made, that they want for college students to watch while they're getting drunk and stoned. Netflix, Paramount, Hulu, and Amazon, they're not purposely trying to make schlocky movies, though. If something is bad, you don't need to defend it and be like, oh, that was the intention to begin with.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed there are several sloppy things in here that I know I could be criticized as being a fanboy because, that's how it is. But it's like one thing I noticed, and it just shows you like the lack of like an internal logic in like the writing of this is in Scream 4, they show they're watching Stab 7. So there's 7 Stab movies.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone in this movie bitches about Stab 8. That's apparently the most recent one. The Dead Meat guys are shown like having a video criticizing it. Mindy makes reference to saying everyone hated the 8th one because it had nothing to do with it, any of the other movies. But Wes, who is Officer Judy, now Sheriff Judy's son, makes reference like, well, my mom's in one of those movies. And like, yeah, no one cares about those movies. So that would logically mean Stab 8 was about Scream 4. So it's like, well, that would then actually be about the real cases. So it's like, it just shows like a lack of like laziness with the internal logic. It's like, just if you made it Stab 12, you made 15 or 5 more of them, that logic works where the fans keep getting pissed off. We see in part 4, the kids love all the Stab movies. They're quoting them incessantly in that scene in the barn, which I think showed a great thing of the reverence for them. But now we're saying one movie later, it had nothing to do with it, which that can't be the case, and that everyone hates these movies now, and it's just like a lack of internal logic really weakens your movie. Like, you're not paying attention to your own plot. Why should we then care about it?
I think they should have maybe thought through the implications, but I think most importantly, we don't see Stab 8 really. I think we see that like little moment on YouTube with the spray can with the flamethrower sort of thing.
Which that was a misdirect in the trailer, the metal mask mask with the flamethrower.
Yeah.
I did kind of like that because I'm like, ooh, where are we going with that? But,
yeah, but I wish we would have seen Stab 8 and some sort of like response to that, or maybe it was just opening. It had just come out, and people were reacting very harshly to it. That could have been part of the setup of the movie, but that was another issue too. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point before, where people are blindly defending corporate trash. It's like it's like
the slop.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's kind of where we stand with this movie.
Yeah, I rank it better than part 3. So going back to my rating system from the beginning of it, I give the original Scream 10 out of 10, perfect movie. Scream 2, I give that maybe like a 9.5 out of 10. Really great movie. Some stuff I didn't like, but it's pretty goddamn close to being as good as the first one. Scream 3, I'll give it like a 6.7. It's passing. It's fun. I enjoy it. It's a junk food movie. Scream 4, I give that maybe like an 8.8, 9. It's pretty damn good again. Kind of wish that's where it ended. This, I'd probably give it like a maybe solid 7.5, C- kind of movie.
I would rank, for me it's still tied between 1 and 2. I still go back and forth as my favorite, even though I do think first is objectively the best one.
Yeah.
But I still think 2 is a great movie. And
I gave it nearly a perfect score.
Yeah, no, it's a terrific film, but I love it for a lot of personal reasons too. But 3 is okay. Yeah, so 1 and 2 are tied, and then below that is 4, and then I think I would put 5 next, and then 3 on the bottom. But I will admit, it could always switch by next week. It's just kind of funny how I never expected. I thought it would be more clear-cut in terms of my ranking, but Scream 3 and 5 are closer than I thought they would be.
Yeah, my prediction was I was really concerned that, like I said, this was going to be like Blair Witch 2016, where I'm like, I know it's objectively better, but I like the schlockier one still, with, in this case, being Scream 3. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, There's a lot, like I said, that I like. I love all the Richie and Mindy jokes. Like the humor in this, I think, is very spot on. Richie, I love his like thing when they're saying, "Well, we got to go to Amber's house. What's the address? 123. I don't fucking care. Or drive or something like that." And it's like, it's very funny. He's great. Jack Quaid's a great actor. But yeah, like I said, the kills are great. And one moment I didn't mention that I love is the first kill in the movie comes a lot later in the movie than we're used to. But when they're killing what we find out to be Stu's nephew, the car is rigged to turn on and Red Right Hand is playing, which is the mainstay of the Scream universe minus Part 4, which didn't have it for some reason. And that kill was perfect because the music like lined up with the kill perfectly. Getting to the point that Ghostface wipes the blood off the knife like as the bell tolls, and I thought that lined up. I thought that was primo moment, great kill. But yeah, no. In the end of the day, if I never had watched this one again, I don't think I would be too upset either. I'll go see the next one, but I don't think I'll need to rewatch this one.
No, I'll include it in my Scream marathon. I'll watch all 5.
Well, I mean, how often do you... No, wait, you do that like every 2 months practically. You do it more than I do. Okay, yeah. Never mind.
That's my favorite horror franchise. But so we can wrap this up, but for the 6th one, that kind of brings me to it, because it seems to be doing well, and they say they want to make a 6th one, so I'm just thinking now, what the hell do you do next? And my thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe now you're on the 6th movie. This is now like the jump the shark phase of the franchise, where like, you have Halloween 6, you have Jason X, you have, Freddy's Dead, these just really terrible schlocky films, and they have to kill the franchise. Is that what you do now?
I mean, that's the only thing. I mean, that was, like I said, the biggest flaw, or the biggest thing this movie had going against it was not that Scream 1 exists, that Scream 4 exists, and not enough had changed in the world of horror, and what did change, Scream 4 was ahead of the curve on, so they kind of already did it, so...
I think a lot changed in the world of horror since Scream 4. That's just...
Not like what they were talking, like when they do at the beginning allude to her being, when Tara was like saying, I like the Babadook and more intellectual horror. I'm like, if we're going that route, that could be interesting. So maybe they could do that. But in the world of the requels, legacy sequels, I think Scream 4 was just a little ahead of the curve, and they touched on it just enough to make this one have a bad start. So I'm really concerned. I think your idea, that's the only thing I can currently think of.
Okay. Yeah, I can't think of either, because enough time passed between 4 and 5 where pop culture and movies and horror movies changed. Cinematic universes, I don't know.
Yeah, they connect it, like, there's Ghostface is killing, and then Michael Myers shows up, and it's connected to Halloween ends.
Or you just do a thing, you just bring everybody back. I don't know, but you could have fun with that, but it just... Yeah, you gotta do it. I guess my main concern is because I wasn't very impressed with the construction of the murder mystery in this. That gives me pause, because it's like, okay, if they make like 3 more of this, is this just what it's gonna be like, where you have these like poorly constructed mysteries and with like poor killer motivation? Like that's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah.
I hope they just maybe get a different writer. Bring Kevin Williamson back. I know he's probably over the franchise, but pay him whatever he wants, or just someone who just is like Williamson. Who, you don't have to be Ken Williamson. Just for God's sakes,
just put the care into it that he did.
Well, not care in the sense of just being learned and well read enough to know how to make a functional film.
Yeah, I mean, in the end of the day, I look at, I try and, like, when we were leaving the theater and I was digesting this, because again, I enjoyed it. Like I said, I point out plenty of stuff I enjoyed with this. I was trying to think where I would rank this in legacy sequels I've seen. I think this is much better than the Jurassic World movies. I mean, I loved the first trilogy of Jurassic Parks. I enjoyed this more than Jurassic World, a hell of a lot more than Fallen Kingdom, to the point that I hated Fallen Kingdom so much I do not want to see Jurassic Dominion. It's the same thing with the Halloween movies. I really liked Halloween 2018. I might put it above this one in terms of a legacy sequel done well. Not 100% sure. This is a lot better than Halloween Kills, though. Like, Halloween Kills, had I seen that in theaters, I would have been pissed off. This I still enjoyed. So, I know I said I don't want to see Scream 6, but if they do one, I'll see it, just because I love the franchise. And they haven't burnt the bridges enough. They're pouring the gasoline on the bridge and they're handing out matches, I think, but they haven't done enough damage for me to hate them.
Scream has not gotten to the point yet of all these other franchises where they've gotten watered down and homogenized. That's what I'm worried about. Where now it's like, oh, Scream, now we can start milking that for all it's worth. That's what I'm worried about, and just really making shitty movies. Like you have to do a lot to really get there, but in this day and age, that could very well happen.
It could happen quickly.
Or maybe they could commentate on that in Scream 6. Where it's like this big corporation is like, oh, Stab's hot again. We want to do this, that, and that. We want to make a TV show. We want to make a spin-off series. We want to do all that. They could maybe commentate on that. That could be fun. But again, in terms of other legacy sequels, it ain't Matrix Resurrections in terms of what it's trying to do and deconstruct these things. But it's a genuine effort. I just wish there was more research and more thought put into it, because at times it does come off as like a reactionary movie.
Yeah.
And that I think puts it in like Scream 3, where it will not hold up as well.
Yeah.
Still watchable and fun. I enjoyed it, but
I'd recommend it still.
Not like 1, 2, and 4 for me.
Yeah, I still recommend it. Sure, tickets are really expensive at the theater and all that, but if it's anything like our theater experience, there was like a dozen people in the theater, so we were fine. I recommend it. It was enjoyable enough that if you like Scream, you'll still like these. If you hated Scream 3 and you have a burning hatred for that movie, maybe don't. But if you're kind of like just whatever with it, like we are, I think you'll like this.
I think the fans will like it.
Yeah. After they've been accused of being serial killers.
And that's a good note to end on.
Yeah. All right. Well, we hope you enjoyed our little discussion into Scream 2022.
What's the next one going to be called?
Well, much like Halloween, they'll just come up with a new subtitle.
Scream Kills?
How about Scream 6, The Search for More Money?
On a gathering storm comes a tall, handsome man in a dusty black coat with a